Okay. This is a presentation for the research entitled Early Diagnosis, Vertical Transmission of HIV and its Associated Factor among Exposed Infants after the launch of Option Plus regimen in Ethiopia. Systematic review and meta-analysis done by me and my colleagues. As an introduction, globally more than 1.7 million people living with HIV were children. Among these children, two-thirds of children living with HIV, that 67% were found in Eastern and South Africa, in which our country, Ethiopia, shared among this burden. Nearly 90% of route of HIV transmission among children is mother-to-child transmission occurred either during pregnancy, labor delivery, or breastfeeding. The rate of transmission of HIV can be reached up to 45% without an intervention among on this time, either on pregnancy if there is no intervention, labor delivery, or breastfeeding, it can be reached up to 45%. However, increasing access to effect of prevention of mother-to-child transmission strategies like early diagnosis of HIV among exposed infants, provision of ARV prophylaxis at birth, and safe delivery practice can reduce mother-to-child transmission of HIV below 5%. If these methods or strategies are applied during on these three times, that's high prevalent, can be reduced to 5%. In 2013, World Health Organization launched a new and simplest guideline called that's Option B Plus regimen for prevention of mother-to-child transmission. This Option Plus regimen is a simple option providing a combination of 3 antiretroviral drugs per day for all HIV positive mother on the day of diagnosis, adjusted for cell count, which is different from the previous option, that's Option B and A. More than 84% of pregnant women with HIV receive treatment to prevent mother-to-child transmission and to protect their own health. In Ethiopia, after Option Plus launched in early 2030, majority of HIV-infected women are on Option Plus regimens. Despite this, even if these women's majority of the women are in Option B Plus, over 400 children are infected with HIV every day with mother-to-child transmission, either during pregnancy, during breastfeeding, or labor delivery. Nearly 30% of affected children will die by their first birthday, and half of them by their second if untreated. That is why testing exposed infants early is so mandatory, in which WHO recommends to test unexposed infants within 4 up to 6 months of birth. It is recommended because of the reason that even though coverage has increased from 28% to 60%, it continues to lag behind the need. In Ethiopia, early diagnosis of HIV among exposed infants range from 6.7% reported in Oromia to 93.9% reported in Amharic. So there is a discrepancy and inconsistency in the result of early diagnosis of HIV among exposed infants. In addition, the rate of mother-to-child HIV after the launch of Option Plus in Ethiopia range from 1.3% reported research conduct in Amharic and Tigray region to 50.7% reported in the radio city. So in addition that of exposed infant test discrepancy is also inconsistent in the prevalence of mother-to-child transmission prevalence. So this systematic review and meta-analysis that we have conducted and to explore the concrete and mega evidence at the national level on early diagnosis, its outcome, that's vertical transmission after the launch of Option Plus and its associated factors in Ethiopia. When we come to the meteorology part, databases, like the major databases, electoral databases such as PubMed or Medline, Cochrane Library, Google, and Google Scholar, and local institutional repository and websites were used to search for eligible studies. This systematic review and meta-analysis was reported based on the PRISMA guidelines. Keywords and their appropriate match terms are medical subject fitting terms combined with the Boolean operator or and, where to search relevant articles to be included in systematic review and meta-analysis. The other individual citation also used to manage duplications, and the search was conducted till August 2021. When it comes to the eligibility criteria of studies, all studies conducted in Ethiopia on early diagnosis and prevalence of mother-to-child transmission as a vertical transmission among exposed infants or its associated factor after 2013, after the launch of Option Plus, that means, and reported English were included. No restriction was considered regarding study design and study setting, whereas studies were excluded if the study is not reported in English. the study's qualitative and scale report, and the study is not fully accessed to criticize. So this study will be excluded in our study. Article could be which could be not accessed in their full format at the time of search process were excluded after contact was attempted with principal investigators in at least 2 times. The first outcome of this meta-analysis was to estimate early diagnosis of HIV among exposed infants in Ethiopia after the launch of B+. As we have discussed earlier, World Health Organization has recommended early diagnosis of HIV among exposed infants at 6 weeks using deoxyribonucleic acid polymerase chain reaction biological test. The second objective of this meta-analysis was to estimate the vertical transmission as mother-to-child transmission of HIV among exposed infants, and the third one is exploring possible factors associated with the vertical transmission of HIV. When it comes to data extraction, standardized data extraction format developed based on 2014 Jonah Bring Institute review manual was used to extract the data using Excel spreadsheet. The extraction format include like the primary outer, the year, the region conducted, the variables, possible factors associated with the vertical transmission that are listed in the primary study, and the prevalence of early neonatal or infant exposed infant test prevalence, plus the sample size and the response rate. Jonah Bring Institute meta-analysis of statistics assessment and review instrument was used to criticize included studies, and after criticize quality assessment, studies scored 5 and above were included in the systematic review meta-analysis. When it comes to the analysis, stat average 14 was applied for analysis. Cochrane to statistics with inverse variance I-square was used to estimate heterogeneity across included study. P-value less than 0.05 was used to confirm the presence of heterogeneity across studies. Random effect model analysis was used as the estimation of Cochrane to statistics I-square indicate a possibility of heterogeneity. Publication bias was assessed using average regression test and funnel plot. When come to is result part, a total of 19 primary studies conducted in 6 regions of Ethiopia after Ocean Plus launched, that's in 2013, were included in systematic review and meta-analysis. All studies were conducted after the launch of Ocean Plus and published 2014 to 2021. A total of 6,924 HIV positive with their exposed infants were included to estimate early diagnosis test and that its outcome, the vertical transmission. Accordingly, the full estimate of these 60 primary studies indicates that the overall early diagnosis of HIV exposed infant in Ethiopia was 64.84% with a confidence interval of this. In addition, the meta-analysis of 19 primary studies revealed that the pooled prevalence of mother-to-child transmission after the implementing of option B+ Ethiopia was 5.64% with a 95 confidence interval of this value. However, substantial heterogeneity was reported among included studies as evidenced with the inverse variance square at 82.4% and the significant p-value. The result of a statistic test, which indicates 0.432, is non-significant exclude publication bias across included study. In addition, the rate of mother-to-child transmission of HIV was decreased with time as evidence with pooled mother-to-child transmission of HIV, that's vertical transmission of 6.6% among studies conducted before 2016, but after the launch of Film Plus, and 4.6% among studies done after 2015. So there is a slight decreasement of vertical transmission from time to time, which indicates that the option plus is launches day-to-day. There is a day-to-day success or day-to-day, for example, increasement of the quality or follow-up or monitoring, whatever. There may be something, so there is a decreasement, which indicates a positive side. The present side shows that absence of any follow-up home delivery, enrollment of infant after 6 weeks, mixed infant feeding, and absence of antiretroviral prophylaxis at birth were statistically significant factors associated with mother-to-child transmission. So these factors are associated factors identified using this meta-analysis, which selected from the primary studies, including primary studies. So NC follow-up, even if it's recommended, there may be mother who are no NC follow-up, especially in the rural area or other parts of the country. Home delivery, still there may be home delivery. This indicates that there is still home delivery. Enrollment of infant after 6 weeks, even if it is recommended immediately, there may be late enrollment. Mixed feeding is not recommended, and absence of antiretroviral prophylaxis, either because of absence or shortage of this prophylaxis or other any means. There is an antiretroviral prophylaxis absence after their birth, so it's one factor to which affects this mother-to-child transmission or vertical transmission. So the overall prevalence of early diagnosis of HIV among exposed infants in Ethiopia was 64.8%. This indicates that only 2/3 of HIV exposed infants were tested before or at 6 weeks of age, according to WHO recommendation. So only 2/3, even if WHO recommended more than that, only 64 were tested. Study conducted in Cameroon showed constant result to our present finding. In addition, this finding is higher than study report in Tanzania and Kenya, and lower than study conducted in Lesotho. The full prevalence of mother-child transmission, that is vertical transmission, was 5.64%. This rate of mother was much lower than the rate of mother-to-child transmission before 2013. That means option plus is better option than the previous one, that is option B or option A. That's why the current, that's after the launch option plus, mother-to-child transmission was 5.64, but before the launch it is 14.32. The reason may be option plus regimen is better than the previous option in prevention of mother-to-child transmission. Option plus is a once daily simplified triple and lifelong guarantee for pregnant and breastfeeding women at the time of HIV diagnosis, regardless of CD4 count or clinical stage. This may be a reason why mother-to-child transmission or vertical transmission during option B plus is lower than the previous options, but still higher than WHO desired target of mother-to-child transmission among breastfeeding mother. Even if the prevalence of vertical transmission is lower than the previous option or previous year, it is still out of the target. The pooled rate of mother-to-child transmission is still higher than a systematically reported in China and Tanzania similar study. The present result is lower than a meta-analysis reported in East Africa because studies conducted including East Africa may include studies with high prevalence of HIV and the studies conducted before the launch of B+, that's before 2013. The finding of this meta-analysis is in line with studies reported in Uganda. Furthermore, the rate of mother-to-child transmission of HIV among exposed infants was decreased as confirmed with 6.6 among studies reported before 2016 as a launch plus, but while 4.6 among studies conducted in 2015. This indicates that improvement of option plus service coverage, utilization over a period of time, or acceptance of this option plus among HIV exposed, among HIV population women or pregnant women across the country, or adaptation of the guideline maybe as a reason. When it comes to these factors associated with vertical transmission of HIV, the odds of mother-to-child transmission of HIV was higher among infant of mothers who had NIC follow-up during pregnancy. So NIC follow-up is one factor for this high prevalence of vertical transmission. This finding is supported by evidence reported in Kenya. The possible reason may be NIC follow-up enable early screening and enrollment of mother and their newborn into PMT service, increasing provision and use of institutional delivery, early decision to feeding option, and better to chance to access ARV product at birth. So all these factors may be a reason why absence of NIC increase vertical transmission and presence of NIC follow-up decrease vertical transmission. The rate of mother-to-child transmission was higher among infants born at home when compared to that of born at health institution. This is why it is usual that mothers who give birth at health institution will get service like prophylaxis, support, delivery service assistant, and blah. So it may be a reason. If it is at home, vertical transmission would be as usual. This finding is in line with finding of systematic review reported in East Africa, studies conducted in Nigeria and Zimbabwe. The odds of mother-to-child transmission of HIV was also doubled among newborn who had been enrolled into PMT after 6 weeks of age. Even if it is common before 6 weeks of, there are newborns who are enrolled after 6 weeks of the age. This finding is in line with studies conducted in Kenya. The odds of mother-to-child transmission of HIV was also doubled among newborn who had been enrolled in PMT after 6 weeks of age. This finding was conducted in Kenya. HIV exposed infants who feed mixed feeding for the first 6 months were also 4 times more likely to acquire HIV infection when compared with infant who had exclusive breastfeeding. It is usual that even if vertical transmission is be considered in breastfeeding rather than selecting mixed feeding. Exclusive breastfeeding is better than that. That is why it may be a risk factor. The finding is supported with study conducted in East Africa. Moreover, the odds of mother-to-child transfer of HIV was higher among exposed infants who had not received ARV prophylaxis at birth. It is usual that ARV prophylaxis was given to decrease this mother-to-child transmission, that's vertical transmission. If the neonate doesn't get this, the risk will be higher. It's obvious. This finding consistent with finding of studies reported in Brazil and Uganda. When come to the conclusion of our study in Ethiopia, only 2/3 of HIV exposed infants were tested before or at 6 weeks of age according to WHO recommendation. So this is much lower than that of WHO recommendation. The other is a major reduction of the rate of mother-to-child transmission of HIV was observed after the implementation of option B plus in Ethiopia. Still, the pooled prevalence of mother-to-child transmission of HIV was higher than WHO target among breastfeeding participants to be less than 5%, but our finding indicated it is greater than 5%. Encouraging antenatal care follow-up and institutional delivery. Enrolling HIV exposed infant immediately after delivery or at least before 6 weeks according to WHO recommendation, and promotion of exclusive breastfeeding rather than mixed feeding, and increasing provision of antiretroviral prophylaxis at birth were recommended to minimize this high rate of mother-to-child HIV in Ethiopia and to decrease or to make zero of the vertical transmission. This variable should be elevated or measurement should be done accordingly on with the Ethiopian Federal Ministry of Health or collaborate stakeholders. So this is all about early diagnosis, vertical transmission, and its associated factor after the launch of SHUI+ in Ethiopia.